Welcome back to the BookEnds YouTube channel. I'm James McGowan.
And I'm Jessica Faust.
We are literary agents who have taken our popular blog to YouTube to discuss all things publishing. And this is an often requested one, but not an easy one to do.
I hate this idea.
Well, thank you, Carrie Ruthless, for commenting and asking us the question.
It's gonna be hard. You gave us a tough one. It's a tricky one.
It is. Well, Carrie asked if we have any resources for writing a good synopsis for multi-POV stories, especially those with dual timelines or parallel plots, trying to decide if it would be better to try and weave in everything at once or if it should be separated by storyline. So we thought we would take the opportunity to discuss the two stages: writing a pitch letter, writing a synopsis for dual POV, multi-POV, dual timeline stories. It's gonna be a lot, so we're just gonna kind of bounce off each other.
It's gonna be a lot. And the truth is, every time I am pitching a book that is multi-POV or dual timeline, I want to dig a hole and sink into it because this is not easy. I don't really have a precise answer to this question because I think it's a little bit story dependent.
I was just gonna say, there's no one answer because it does depend on what you're doing. And sorry, I had to throw something out. So I just it does depend on the story that you're pitching, what's going on, what the structure is. All of it is different. So this is kind of a non-answer, but you have to write the pitch in a way that's going to get the reader to want to read the book. And not every POV, timeline, story, perspective is going to be needed in your 2 to 3 paragraph pitch to get someone to read the book.
This might be one of those situations where before you sit down and write the book and get hung up on the 2 different POVs or timelines, that you write the pitch first. Because when you sit down to construct the story and come up with the idea for the story, you are seeing it as one story. At the end of the day, your pitch and your synopsis and your book are one book. It happens to be dual POV or dual timeline, but that is not how you would tell somebody about the book. I mean, so you're pitching the thing as a whole. And anytime you're pitching a book and anytime you're writing a synopsis, you're doing it as a whole. And that's the most important thing to remember.
They all have a through line. They all have something that's connecting them. And if they don't, that's an issue. And if you can't find it, that's a bigger issue. But I think when you're writing your pitch, it might be helpful to zoom out and focus on that through line and start with the through line and write a pitch that's just that through line, right? Like, you know, what if they're solving a murder? One is a detective and one is a victim, or one is a suspect, right? All 3 of them are connected by that one crime. So maybe you zoom out and you start with that one crime and you try and find the thing that connects them and then find their general pieces, then how they fit in. And you just kind of have to start as far out as you can because you're the writer and you know everything intimately about this book, and you kind of can get lost in the details a little bit.
Yeah, I'm sitting here thinking of 2 books that I pitched recently. One was a dual POV suspense, and one is a dual timeline suspense. And neither of the books did I pitch in any way that separated those points of view or those timelines. I pitched it as one book, pushing the story as a whole. And with the dual timeline, with the dual POV, I never even mentioned that it was dual POV. I pitched it as the story. It just happens to be dual POV. In fact, it wasn't until we were talking about this that I even remembered that. The dual timeline, I think I may have mentioned that, you know, the character sort of is exploring the past. But the truth is, it really, you know, I think I'm thinking of crawdads. Right word? And that's a dual timeline and a dual POV.
Yes.
And at no point would you tell somebody about that book and address either of those things in the way you talk about it or in your pitch.
No, you would probably start that book with saying it's about a girl who grew up in the marsh and she was left alone. She fended for herself, and then she was a suspect in a murder.
That's it.
And that's your hook, and that's your main concept. And everything else could be included in one of those little fluffer paragraphs at the end about word count, or in the beginning word count, whatever. It could be included there, but I don't think that's the main focus of your book. And I think it's...
Go on.
No, that's probably all I had to say. I probably would just repeated myself 3 times until you cut me off. So go ahead. I'm just gonna be honest.
What I was gonna say is I don't think it's ever important to mention that your book is dual timeline or dual POV. Now, With dual timelines, sometimes there's an exception where the two timelines somehow converge. So you'll see where it's written on the back cover that this is what's happening in whatever 2023 and this is what's happening in 1823. So you might have three paragraphs, one is one timeline, one is the other, and then the third paragraph might be how those two timelines converge or somewhere in there. But be careful that all of that is pushing the story forward and that you're not just supplying it because you think you need to tell all the people's stories or you're slighting one of your characters.
Yeah, I agree. This is often lost, right? But the purpose of your pitch is to give the general idea and to hook someone in to want to read more. It's not the synopsis. Save all the details for the synopsis, but get me to want to read the book. That's your number one goal. Don't lie about the book. Don't omit intentionally important things, but don't focus on getting everything in the pitch because that is almost certainly where you will lose it all.
Yeah, 100%. And the one thing I would add is that when I am struggling writing a book that's dual POV or multi-timeline or whatever version of either of those, I actually, if I'm struggling, I just go to my comps and I read the cover copy for the comps because that'll just settle my head on what's really important here.
And there's no right way. So those comps can be wildly different. You can have one that's doing the this year and this year, and this is how they converge. You can have one that's not. So there's no right way to pitch a book.
No, what's important is that you are grabbing the attention of the reader. That's the important thing about the pitch. And if you're not doing that, then you need to look at whether it's the pitch or again, it's the idea. But, you know, when we were discussing crawdads a little earlier and you sort of laid it out in 3 or 5 sentences of what that book is about, I think that's a great way to start a pitch. Okay, 3 to 5 sentences. This is what my book is. This is what makes it really interesting. And now I can build my pitch around that instead of these are my characters and this is my plot and these are the 5 different things. And how do I build my
Yeah, in school we had to write a topic sentence and then everything in the paragraph had to be about that topic sentence. So write your topic sentence and then write a pitch after it having that topic sentence. It's your goal. It's like your feedback of writing the query. I mean, your tip of writing the query before you write the book. So this way, when you write the book, you've got an idea of what you want the book to be. Write the sentence that is your hook, that how you would elevator pitch it before you write your query. This way you can keep coming back to that and you have that guide.
Yeah, no, I think that's great.
Just really quickly about synopses. I think we were both pretty much in agreement about this while we mulled it over before clicking record. But when you're writing a synopsis, your synopsis is intended to give the journey of the book, right? From beginning to end. So if you have dual timelines, it should be chronological for the book. So it should be from beginning of the book to the end of the book. It equals beginning of the synopsis to the end of the synopsis. I wouldn't suggest doing, you know, the one timeline's whole synopsis and then the next timeline. That's how we're going to miss how it's all connected. So I think if it's chapter, give us a small paragraph, just work your way through.
But you don't need to also outline every chapter because I've seen authors do that and that actually doesn't work. The synopsis is, I think you should be able to write a 2 to 3 page synopsis for your entire book. So chunk your book up into quarters. You're going to write half a page on the first quarter of the book, half a page on the next quarter, and so on and so forth until you have a full 2 pages of your synopsis. You're not going to go, there are chapters you're not even going to talk about.
Yeah.
Because what you're doing is getting the highlights of how this story evolves, how these characters grow, and how we get to the end. And that's what a synopsis should be. So you are not going to go through each and every bit and each and every character, even if you have 3 points of view, you might not really dig too much into one of your characters because it might not matter. But let's say you have a multi-point of view. Let's say you have 4 characters and let's say it's a suspense, you know, a classic, they've all returned for their reunion. You know, when they were in college together, somebody was murdered. And now we have multi-points of view of each of the characters and what happened and how they got where they are today, kind of thing. You don't need to tell me what every character is going through. You need to tell me the overall story of what's building throughout this book, which sort of melds them all together, even though the way you tell the story is separately.
Yeah, I agree. I think when you're writing a multi-POV synopsis, you really don't have to get into the weeds. I think it's really when you're writing a dual timeline that you'll find yourself alternating a bit more.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And I think that's the biggest thing, what you said about synopsis and pitch. Just be careful you don't get into the weeds. They got to be short and tight, and that's what you're shooting for. And the minute it starts to get too much, take the step away and go back to those 4 sentences you wrote that you formed your pitch around, because even those 4 sentences should be what you form your synopsis around.
Agreed. So we did it in the end. We got there. I would hate for
Well,
someone to have to
well,
write a synopsis of this video.
I
So
mean,
we ended it a
the
little
truth,
bit.
the truth is we'll find out if we got there once we read the comments.
Yeah, and the comments are like, that did nothing for me. Carrie Ruthless is gonna come back and be ruthless and tell us this video sucked.
It's happened before, it'll happen again.
It will happen again for sure. But in the end, we do hope it was helpful. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We post videos every Wednesday, and we hope to see you back here next week.
Bye.